Hello my friend and welcome to my channel Faisal Azib. In this video we talk about data type. So first of all, in JavaScript, every value is either an object which looks something like this, as you see, let persons with name Faisal, or a primitive value like this one, first name and age. So value is only primitive when it's not an object, and we'll learn all about object later, but for now let's really focus on primitive data type. So there are 7 primitive data type: number, string, Boolean, Undefined, null, symbol, and big int. So let's look at them one by one. First, we have the number of data type, and numbers are always so-called floating point numbers, which means that they always have decimals even if we don't see them or don't define them. For example, the 40 value here we have is exactly like having 40.0 or 40.0, the same thing. But they are both simply the number data type. In many other programming languages, you will find different data type for integers and for decimals, but not in JavaScript. All numbers are simply of the type number. Okay? Next up, we have string, which are simply a sequence of characters. And so they are just used for text, as we already learned, and always put them in quote. It's very important. No matter if double quote or single quote. Otherwise, JavaScript will actually confuse them with variable name. What we have also? We have the Boolean data type. It's essentially a logical type that can only one of the logical values, true or false. In other words, a Boolean is always either true or false. Okay? We use Boolean values to take decision with code, as we will see later, inshallah. Let's continue. And these are the 3 most important data type that we will deal with the most, but there are still 4 more which may be a bit more confusing. So the first one is undefined. Undefined is the value taken by a variable that is not yet defined. And the variable that's not yet defined is simply just a variable that we declared but without assigning a value, for example, like this course variable here. So basically, we can say that undefined means empty value. Okay? Then there is also null, which is actually pretty similar because it also means empty value, but it is used in different circumstances. But for now, don't worry about the details, please. I just want you to know that null also exists for now. Okay? Anyway, next we have symbol, which was introduced in ES 2015, and this data type is not really useful for us. It simply defines a value that is unique and cannot be changed. And we will talk about this briefly by the end of the course. Finally, starting in ES 2020, there is also big int, which is for integers that are too large to be represented by the number type. So basically, it's another type before numbers, and we'll talk about this one in other section. Don't worry about this. Okay? So these are the 7 primitive data type in JavaScript. But there is another fundamental thing to know about type, which is the fact that JavaScript has a feature called dynamic typing. This means that when you create a new variable, you do not have to manually define the data type of the value that it contains. In many other programming languages, you actually have to do that, but not in JavaScript. Instead, JavaScript automatically determine the data type of a value when it's stored into a variable. And this distinction between value and variable is pretty important because in JavaScript it's the value that has a type, not the variable. So, variables simply store value that have a type. Many people don't know about this detail or just don't care, but this is how it actually works. Now, another important application of dynamic typing is that later in our code, we can assign a new value with different data type to the same variable without problem. For example, variable x can initially be a number and then later a string. That's not a problem at all. And this can, of course, be very useful, but it can also be the source of some difficult to find bugs, which means error in our code. Alright, so let's now actually see this thing in action. But before we talk about data type, let's quickly talk about code commenting. Let's go. So, in programming, we use comment to literally comment the code or to deactivate code without deleting it. For example, here I can say, or I could write a single line command using // okay, and then I can describe what this code is doing. So for example, here I can say variables name or variable name conventions like this. Okay, so it's mean all this part here describe related to this subject. And JavaScript will completely ignore anything that is a command. So anything that comes after a // like this, okay, and this can be really useful to kind of divide our code into different sections and to explain what different pieces of code are actually doing in our code. It's very important this when you work, of course, with a team, okay, to manage your application, to update, for the maintenance, etc., etc. So that's very useful application of command, but another one is to simply comment out code that we don't want to be executed for some reason. For example, let's say we don't want this code here, okay, to be executed, but we also don't want to delete it. We don't want. So we can simply comment it like this, // okay. Now, and if I save now and I reload the page, as you can see, I don't have the operation that gives us, I remember, 18. Okay? So you see that because JavaScript is now ignoring this code, it is just a command. But since we didn't delete it, we can of course bring it back. So we can just delete it and then it's back to normal. So simple like this. Now, in VS Code, we can also automatically create command using Ctrl/ shortcut in Windows or Command/ in Mac. So Ctrl/ in Windows, as you can see, or as I said, Command/ in Mac. Okay? So, with this shortcut, you can comment and uncomment the code. I mean, when you use again Ctrl/, the command will go. Okay? So that's single line command, but we can go even further and also create multi-line command. And to do that, we do it like this. So I did from the start of the code. We start a multi-line command using a slash, and after that, an asterisk, or I call it as a star, an asterisk. And then we ended with asterisk or a star, and then slash. So I will do it in the end of the code. I repeat. Now other sense, asterisk or a star, and I finish with a slash. Now I have multi-line command. Okay? And with this, I effectively got a write of this first code that we typed in the first video, but without deleting it. And so I can keep it here, basically as a reference. Alright. And so that's what I am gonna do in every window now, inshallah. We will always kind of get rid of the previous code by using a multi-line command like this. But now, let's get back to the topic of this video, which is data type. So, in previous video, we already saw numbers and strings, right? So here we have a value which has a number, for example, this one, and here we have a value which is string, developer, Faisal, etc., etc. So nothing new at this moment. Good. That will be learned at the beginning of the video, but we also talk about Booleans. Remember? And so Boolean is a value that can be only be true or false. And so if you write true, then that is then automatically a Boolean value, which is in this case true. Okay, and actually I can also log that to the console, and then here you can get a true. So console.log true. Okay, you see the result. Sorry, true. And you can see that that is not string, because string are printed in white color, and this value is printed in this blue color. Okay, and so it's actually really a Boolean value. And of course we can also store Booleans in variables. So let's say let is student, for example, equal true. Okay, here I have do it in camel case. That's really about before. So it's true. And now we can log is student. So but of course instead, of course the variable declaration here needs to happen before the log, of course. I mean, I put it here, of course. And that's because JavaScript programs are executed from the top to the bottom. Okay? Like this, and more about that a bit later in the course. What matters is that this needs to be at the end. So, let's reload now. And now, sorry, I haven't changed it here. So, is student, and now, as you can see, it is true. Very good. And so here we created a nice and descriptive variable name holding a Boolean value. And remember, that is actually the value that holds the data type and not the variable, because I could now actually go ahead and change this value with another type. And actually, I will do that in a second, but for now, let's take a look at special operator called Typeof. So, Typeof, it's an operator just like the plus or the minus operator, that we can use to show the type of value. So let me show you how. So again, we use console.log, okay, because we actually want to see the result of this operator in the console. So typeof make a little space with space button, and then let's say just true, like this, okay? And we'll talk more about how operator actually works and what they are a bit later in the section. For now, let's just see what happens when we load this page, and that is Boolean. Good. So just as I said, the result of using this operator here on the value will be a new value which is string with the type of this value that we have added here, okay? So let's do that again here. I will copy this line multi times, so I will do it 4 times, for example, like this. And so here, let's use a variable is student, okay? And so this should also be a Boolean, just to make sure, okay? And let's use a number and finally a string. So let's use, for example, here 10, and here I will put my name, Faisal, with single or double quote, no problem. Okay, Faisal. So just to prove you that these are actually numbers and string, okay? So let's see now, and indeed, you see, we see that a student is Boolean, 10 is a number, and Faisal is a string. And speaking about string, I just want to quickly emphasize that we really always need to use quote in order to create string. So let's actually show that here in the console. So we can use double quote or single quote, but we really do need quote in order to create string. So I write here Faisal with single quote, and that is it. And also I can write it with double quote in the double quote, and it's good. But if we do it like this, I start with single quote, for example, Faisal, and I will end with double quote. Here I got an error. It's gonna not work, okay? So it needs to be the same at the beginning and at the end. But without any code, like this, JavaScript, we see this as variable, and then we get this reference error, which is saying that Faisal not defined, is not defined. And that's because it is looking for a variable that does not exist. So it is the name of this variable is Faisal. What I mean, like this, it is a variable that name Faisal like this. We never declared a variable called Faisal, right? And so that's why we get this error here. So when you need a string, don't forget please the code. It is a mistake that I see beginners make all the time. And so really be careful about that. Now let's continue. Let's actually see dynamic typing in action. And remember that dynamic typing simply means that we can easily change the type of a value that is held by a variable. So that sounds a bit fancy, but is really as simple as this. So we already have variable called isStudent. And so let's now reassign that variable. So we do that like this. Is a student, okay? So you write the name of the variable, then equal, and then a new value, for example, a string that is yes. Okay? And what matters is that we do not write the let keyword. Here is what is matters here. So, this let keyword, so the first time that we declare a new variable, we need to do it using let, but then when we want to change the value of the variable, we simply write it again like this, but without the let. So we simply assign a new value here to this existing variable is student. And this is actually the first time that we did that. And so it's important to understand what happened here. Okay? So again, we first declared the variable, a new variable, with a name and assign it is this true value. And then down here, we change the value data of the variable. So we put yes. So using the box analogy from before, it's like initially putting a book in the box and then later taking the book out of the box and instead putting a phone in the box. And so just like here, we change the content of the box. Okay? In our example here, we change from true to the string of yes. Okay? And now, let's just grab this piece of code and I put it here to see that dynamic typing actually works. So I save and let's load it again, and as you can see, here is string and string. Okay, you can see it in line 41, so this one. So let's actually simplify a little bit. So I will comment some code that we have done before. We don't need it. So this one, I will use the shortcut. So Control slash and or Command slash. This one also, and this one also. Oops. Okay. So now you will see. So the type of the value initially is Boolean, and after this is string. So we change it to a string down here. And so indeed, when we then test the type of the variable again in line 41, then we get the result of string. Good. All right. And that basically is dynamic typing. Cool. And now let's see an example of undefined. So remember that a number string and Boolean are the most used data type, but there are more like undefined and null and also symbol in and being int. But in this video, I am only gonna talk about the three most important ones, and then also undefined and null. So remember that undefined is the value taken by a variable that is not yet defined. So basically undefined means an empty value. So it's perfectly legal in JavaScript to do this. Let year. So to define a variable without a value, and if we now take a look at this variable, then we should see undefined. So console, let's see that, console log, and I put here year. And actually, let's also check the type of this variable. So console.log type of year. Okay, so that I can show you something. Let's do this. Let's reload. And here we have, as you can see, we have undefined in both. What this means is that whenever we declare an empty variables, the value of the variable will be undefined. and type of the variable is also undefined. Now, that maybe sound a bit confusing, but it's really not. So, simply put, undefined is both the value and the type of the value. And undefined is different than other types in this way. But this detail is not really important. What matters is that when you declare an empty variable like this, it will automatically hold the value of undefined. Okay? I can put it here, undefined. Then, just like before, we can also reassign this variable basically. So we can now go ahead and say year equal 1990. Okay? And once more without the let, because we are not creating a new variable here. We are simply assigning a new value to the year variable. So it is used to be undefined, right? As we just discussed, and now I am changing it to 1990. And so if I test for the type now again, it should be a number, right? So let's check that. So console.log, and here type of year, and now as you can see it is number. Can again see the effect of dynamic typing. It's very cool, huh? Do you see? Great. And now finally, just to quickly finish, I want to show you an error that exists in the type of operator. So all I am going to do here is to quickly say console.log, okay, and type of null. So remember that null is just another data type, and it is similar to undefined. And it is also similar in the fact that both the value and the type of the value are null, okay? Now, about this bug, let's see the result. JavaScript says that type of null is an object. And this doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know, but and so this is regarded as a bug or an error in JavaScript. However, this bug is never corrected for legacy reason, but now it is of course not an object. This should return null, just as a type of undefined returns undefined. So just keeping that in mind when working with Typeof. But we will also come back to this later in the course to make sure that you don't create any accidental bug because of this weird behavior. Okay? And that's all I had to tell you about data type in JavaScript. So see you in the next video, inshallah, to talk about, continue with the variable, but another subject, of course. Just review this again. If you don't understand different type, just watch again this video and you will be familiar inshallah with them. So take care of us, subscribe to my channel Faisal Azib, don't forget, and follow me on Instagram teams.winners, faisal.chico. I tell you goodbye, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.